Welcome to the Change Within podcast. This is episode 26 here, and my name is Gerard Uselli. I have to say, in the last few episodes, we have been going all over the country as far as meeting people and starting to get to know their perspective on how change has influenced their lives. Now, finally, back in the hometown of Staten Island, I have a very special guest for today. His name is Stephen Saachi. Stephen, how are you today?
First off, it's Sacchi, but I'm doing good. How about you?
There we go, Mr. Sacchi. That's my first point of clarification right there. All righty.
I was expecting you, of all people, to not butcher it.
Look, sometimes when you've been out of Staten Island, virtually speaking, you never know what could happen on that case, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to ask you, as I ask all of my guests, I wanted to know what your childhood was like growing up.
Picturesque. I mean, I had great parents. There was no, I didn't really want for anything. We were on the South, it's pretty much very suburban, even though it's within the city limits. And in fact, our mutual friend, Danielle, we used to go to the Silver Gold Club on Rockaway Beach as a kid. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, they got like cabanas, they got pools, they got all that. So like picturesque childhood.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty ambiance New York perspective, especially as people go from Staten Island to Brooklyn and kind of understanding what's around them, especially like in that point, because you expect it only to be the city and you could be surprised with how much more there is to a city like Brooklyn too. And I also think to that point, so as time has developed for you, being that savage is part of the name of your book, I want to break down the word itself. How did you learn about that word and what did it mean to you?
Well, I kind of had a fascination with the word before, like for a while, not so much recently. It was like a popular word for like, kids to say. But I had a fascination with that word way before that. One of my literary influences, in fact, the title of the book is kind of a play on the title of his book, Hunter S. Thompson. He wrote Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, a savage journey through the heart of the American dream. And like in the movie, he uses the word. And I remember, I don't know if you ever seen Clockwork Orange.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, when they cured him of like sex and violence, like if he tried to like have sex or be violent, he would get sick. So to demonstrate, they bring this naked girl out and he's just like, I kind of want to have her all savage on the floor. For some reason, that's like ringing in my ears when I think of the word. And I seen these movies, before the word itself became popular. And a lot of my target audience, a lot of people that had experimented with opioids, like someone that was really just hardcore with it was known as a savage. And to me, it just means, a primitive beast, someone who's operating on the lizard brain, the fight or flight, the survival and replication type stuff. And when I was using drugs and alcohol, that's where I was operating from, and it's kind of just down to our, I don't know, basic needs. Because when you clean your act up and you become an adult and you become a civilized individual, there's all this cool stuff like podcast equipment, how to make a latte. But when you're in a primitive state of mind, you're just thinking like, fight or flight.
Do you also feel like maybe growing up, whether it was like a school environment or any social setting, do you feel like that kind of was embedded in who you were around, like no matter what?
You broke up for a second. What was the question?
Oh, sure. So what I meant to ask you was, like, let's say with that primitive instinct of you being a savage, right? So like, would it kind of like also resonate with how you were in school at the time and things of that sort?
No, because it didn't really get out of line until like I started to with or away from school, more or
Gotcha.
less. Like I had experimented in high school, but it wasn't until like a year or so into college that I really started to get out of line. And then I just stopped going to class altogether. So
Fair enough. And also in the sense of Staten Island itself. Now, as we both know and understand, it's a city filled with stigma. Now, what I'm curious about with you and anyone who tries to build a name for themselves around here, I'm sure we get immersed with this type of territory throughout our lives. What is it like to brand yourself as a person compared to the city that you live in?
I'm unapologetically from Staten Island, and I'm not going to water it down. In fact, I'm going to flaunt it because anytime I've left here, like even if I just go 20 minutes into New Jersey, they love it. I mean, the only people that don't seem to like it, we got a reputation and whatnot, but we have the best sense of humor. We're sharper than most people. We may sound like we're uneducated and stupid, but my Staten Island friends are some of the smartest people I know. You know?
Yeah.
Usually when I go to Jersey, you'll get some guys that like, oh, Mr. Staten Island. And the only reason they feel that way is because they see the twinkle in their girlfriend's eyes when they look at us.
I will say this, and for someone who's worked in the city a lot of my life as well, when you do say you're from Staten Island, you do kind of get that glimpse of like starting a whole conversation based on you as the person. I feel like it just diverts into who like we are as people as well.
Yeah, I read an article that like, because we're like the last of the Mohicans, because I'm sure your parents and whoever, they all moved here from Brooklyn. They either moved to Staten Island from Brooklyn or to Jersey. And our generation, if their parents came from Brooklyn, moved to Jersey, the accent completely got drowned out. There's like these like language experts that were saying that like the New York accent that we grew up with and know about, like Frank Rizzo, Andrew Dice Clay, like that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
It's like in 50 years, there won't be a New York accent. So I'm at the end of it. So I'm going to fucking, you know what I mean? I'm going to embellish it as much as I can. Keep it alive.
Hey, it definitely has gotten us to where we are as far as like what we're known for and how people can kind of make us like stand out in that way. So in a lot of cases, why not embellish it at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that point,
The people love it. They find it funny.
Exactly. Also, like with the sense of coping.
So
with
why hide it, you know?
Yeah. So what I was curious about is like with coping with your past, like, and I know that humor has really come to fruition within your social media, especially. How has it played a part for you to move forward from drug abuse?
My sense of humor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get sober to be miserable. I mean, if I can't crack jokes and be funny, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people in recovery that are like, oh, well, we're gonna, you know, become more mature individuals, and I'm with all that, but I still got to goof off. Otherwise, you know, I don't want to be a part of it.
Definitely a fair point on that. And
Necessarily a bad thing. It gets me in trouble at work, but you know.
yes, I could definitely understand that, like, as far as on that regard. Now, as this pandemic, it's been filled with dark days for all of us. And let's say, in the sense of comparing with like your phase of addiction, how would you compare like going through the pandemic versus your darkest days filled with addiction?
Well, I didn't really struggle through the pandemic. It kind of worked for me because a year ago I only had like a rough first draft of the book done. Uh, my job has been open the whole time, but I had a lot more time on my hands. Like Friday, Saturday night, there's nowhere to go. So without all those distractions, I was able to like kind of buckle down and finish the book. So the pandemic kind of worked for me. I kind of enjoyed the time in solitude.
Absolutely.
If I wasn't working on a book, I would go out of my mind.
That's fair enough. And especially with me on the podcast, it's kind of to relate to your point. When you're not doing something that's like a productive recess-esque type of hobby, you really don't know what to do with yourself. And the vices that can surround you are much more accessible than you think, too.
Oh yeah, I quit smoking for a while, and then I started again in the pandemic. I needed something.
Yeah, and that's fair because I was the same way with alcohol. A lot of people don't know this. So I used to be pretty bad with alcohol till last year. And kind of to subvert that type of vice, I went slowly from alcohol to coffee. And not to say that it's entirely better, but it's a better means of coping with something that was a former vice of yours, and then trying to ration off. Okay, if I could go to coffee or something like that, maybe less and less I'll have that, and it kind of just it's embedded in your lifestyle in a different fashion.
Yeah, the pandemic made it easy for me to stay sober because when I relapse, I typically start with drinking, and it's like, well, what am I gonna do? Drink in my apartment by myself? You
Right.
know what I mean? The bars are closed, so what's the point?
You definitely have a fair
At
point.
least it's how I looked at it.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense because especially when you have that premonition to drink alone, it doesn't give off a good sense for anybody in how they go through something, and their darkest thoughts are somber to themselves. They don't really know, aside from the bottle that they're drinking out of, how to really express their emotions, especially in the worst times of quarantine.
Yeah, no,
Another
absolutely.
Another question I had for you is, now I've seen a lot of your reviews on your book, and it's just remarkable for how many people who have been addicted and trying to get through the same things you have gone through, seeing comments like, in quotes, "I can't put this book down." Do you feel like you're starting to have a voice in people's lives?
Uh, I hope so. I
That's a,
I, I don't want to let my ego go too far. I want to try
sure.
and be humble about it. I think it resonated with the people that read it, but I don't want to I don't want to blow myself up too much.
I also would say to you as well, as for anyone who is trying to express themselves in a way that will be accessible to a lot of people, I think it's one of those narratives where we ultimately go through the same things, but our environments and how our upbringings are makes us channel things differently. So for the things that you've went through versus how someone else can, it's the point of finding synergies together and seeing how much you can emphasize with the offer.
Yeah, identify because I say a lot of things that a lot of people in recovery feel and think, but they won't share it. Like they won't share their frustrations because big group think and it's all supposed to be positive. So anything that like has to do with like frustrations and stuff, people are kind of like reluctant to share that. Whereas me, I got nothing but grievances.
Well, it's interesting because there was a movie I was watching for my grad school program that had to do with conversion therapy because I'm handling like a special education course at this point. And with the group setting, it kind of brought me to this like narrative as well. When you are in that group environment, it is very difficult to really express how you feel, knowing that many of the people that you're around are ultimately strangers in your life, and you don't know what that perception is going to entail for other people.
Yeah, I kind of love the sobriety fellowships, but one of the things that I have frustration with is like they encourage you to open up and talk about these things, but really everybody in there is just talking about how great their life is, and your life does get exponentially better, but it's not always a fairy tale, and sometimes when you voice your frustrations, it could give like a newcomer the wrong idea that maybe this thing doesn't work. And so it's kind of like you kind of got to sacrifice your individuality when you share in those places. because you don't want to upset anybody, especially today. At least when you think the way that I think, then say the things that I say, you upset a lot of people. So I just keep my mouth shut and just write it.
Oh God, that was a funny way to end that question. So firstly, before I get into my last question with you, where can people find the book?
You can get it on Amazon or you can get it on barnesandnoble.com.
Awesome. And my last question is also something I like to ask all of my guests in this case is what's the biggest change you want to see for yourself this year?
This year?
Yep.
A little bit more financial freedom would be nice.
I also would like to say too, the sense of developing passive income, I feel like in a time of pandemic, for all the negatives that are infiltrated in our lives, having some sort of passive income and finding those structures of how to construct those and make those happen, this can't be a better opportunity to do so. So anytime that you can find ways as far as making income, and whether people are struggling with one job, there are so many ways you can experiment in making money. And I wish more of society would promote this as a way that we could build ourselves better and diversify ultimately the hobbies that are immersed with us as well.
Yeah. I don't see a royalty for another few months, but between this and everything else I plan to do, I like between the podcast and a bunch of other endeavors that I'm going to basically get into just for promoting the book, sooner or later, it's all going to come together and click.
Absolutely. So nonetheless, this concludes episode 26 for the Change Within podcast. For those who haven't checked this out, you can check us out at Anchor, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me today and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.